Hello and welcome to the Baby Giants Investing Podcast. Join us as we chat about the weird and wild world of small cap investing, all while searching for the precious few fast-growing businesses that have a shot at becoming industry giants.
This podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be relied upon as the basis for investment decisions. Podcast guests and their clients may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast.
All right, we're live. We've got Claude and Andrew in the house. Still got some kind of lingering cold if my voice sounds weird, but otherwise good to go. And I'll kick off with some good news. Found a bit of good news this week. I think I was a bit slack last week. The first commercial carbon sucking facility in the US opens in California. This is direct air capture of carbon. It's a pretty small amount, but it's capturing it, storing it, selling the credits to people, I guess.
Where do they store it?
Underground, I believe.
Red flag.
Sounds sus.
Yeah, you guys are against carbon storage, eh? It's like a
No,
political issue in Australia.
I'm not against carbon storage. Chuck it under the ground, right? It's got to be
carbon storage.
Yeah, it's. I just don't
Trees.
look. Someone may correct me, but as far as I understand it, none of this technology has been proven viable at scale. It's extraordinarily costly, and it's just a lovely cover for us to keep doing what we want to keep doing and feel good about it. So it's like if the tech is there and it's working, then I'm all for it. But I think previous claims have been unfounded, and I'm pretty skeptical.
You've got some sour, lemon juice in your mouth from previous claims. Yeah, I think that's
definitely not against it, but we've definitely wasted a lot of money on investing in it. Like, as part of my honors thesis, I studied a lot of the grant systems that have been used, which, by the way, grant systems are generally a very ineffective way to, try and subsidize a transition to a less carbon intensive economy. And so looking at some of the bad grants, the like absolute write-off grants, the absolute worst of the worst you can get would probably include carbon capture and storage projects. And Australia spent a lot of money exploring hot rock geothermal, which would have been super cool if it worked. No, I'm not saying we shouldn't have given these grants, by the way. I'm just saying the nature of it is I guess where a grant makes sense is where like, hey, we just want to try it to see if it works kind of thing.
I would make a broader point technologically or scientifically is that anything that seems plausible is worth exploring. But once it's found to be left wanting or there are better solutions, once ideology starts being the driving force of where we invest and research.
It's like, how much do you want to keep on putting into like the company that's yet to get a revenue product? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Good analogy.
But it's like the investors are the, invariably governments or sometimes companies that are profitable that like want to, put some money towards a solution that would allow them to keep on doing what they currently do.
Yeah, I think carbon capture will have to be part of the solution. I kind of got that from Bill Gates' book, just how much is unavoidable emissions. I don't think we're close. Like, I think this is like doing 1,000 tons. It is commercial. Like, people were paying for that. And one other thing that's interesting about it is there's quite a big scandal last couple months of carbon offsets that you might have seen. One of the biggest carbon offset companies turned out to basically, people were buying access to this forest, which was not going to be cut down, which was supposed to lock up more carbon. And it turned out as being cut down more aggressively than the unprotected forest. Mm-hmm. So it was like a complete scam. And this kind of would potentially allow like a carbon offset to actually work, right? You could have a functioning carbon market. You put a price.
How do you
carbon,
measure that it stays underground? That's the issue I have. And
that's a lot easier, right? You just inspect the facilities and check that it's actually there's no like leakage or something. This is like versus trying to
that though. Like, and what's the facilities? Are you sure? Like, because most of the carbon capture and storage that's stored underground has been like putting it like in underground cavern or whatever. You have no real way of knowing if it leaked somewhere else. There is carbon capture and storage, however, that is like mineralizes the carbon into like a solid, which I think is definitely my favorite kind of idea to explore in carbon capture, because you could use that to build something, like it's a material that you can use to build, like limestone kind of thing, and B, also it actually ensures that it stays trapped, which is huge, because then you can pay the money for it, safe in the knowledge it's not going to come out later and you've paid the money and it's all been pointless kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I guess I'd say it's probably easier than trying to verify whether a forest didn't get cut down as a counterfactual.
Also impossible. No, but it's not like, it's not one or the other, right?
All right.
They both
good.
sucky ways.
We've rained on the first bit of good news pretty well. We've got a couple more. All right, this one I was expecting some rain on. Elon Musk's brain implant startup is ready to start surgery. So the first brain implant for Neuralink is happening.
Oh, I'm bullish on that.
Are you bullish on this one? Okay.
Hell yeah.
What do you reckon, Claude?
I don't know enough about it to rain on it, unfortunately.
So they're putting a chip. It's going to be someone who is not able, disabled, most likely not able to use their arms or legs, and the chip will be placed in, and it will be receiving signals for 5 years, so they can see if they can start doing something with it. Basically, if they can read the signals that are supposed to be going to the arms and legs and start doing something useful with it. So I'll put that in good news.
That sounds not too bad.
The key thing here is not to get too far ahead of ourselves. I mean, as I understand it, that technology, it's just mind-blowingly mad at a certain level. But when you get past that, there's been a lot of demonstrable progress that's there. It's sort of like there is potential. There is good potential. And every sort of milestone that we go past there points more towards the legitimacy of that potential. So I don't think we're going to be, melding minds with AGIs anytime soon. But there's some real practical, real wonderful, life-enhancing applications for this before you get to the, matrix side of things. I'm all for it. I'm glad we're spending money on it. Well, someone's
very cool. Scientists in Brazil are developing the first vaccine for cocaine. So you can take a vaccine.
Hold on a second. Just to rewind, Matt. That must be great news for you about the Neuralink. Isn't that like a step closer to living forever?
How is it a step closer to living forever?
I don't know, if you can measure brain activity, at some point you could just stay alive in the form of your brain and have a completely...
No, I don't believe in that at all. I don't think that's a thing. I don't think uploading consciousness is a thing. No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Do you think we extend live? Yeah.
Oh, I mean, by just stopping cells, just rejuvenating cells. Just rejuvenating organs and cells.
That would be a lot more fun.
This is what David Sinclair, Order of Australian is working on, is basically just like you can turn almost any cell back to a stem cell right now. And basically the technology is trying to turn it back to just a younger version of itself. So
there you go. So
I'm not an upload to the Borg, whatever. I don't think that's a thing. I think that's a sci-fi.
Yeah. All right, cool. I'd like to have my cells rejuvenated. I'm feeling really old.
And when I say it's not a thing, I mean, I just don't think I don't think you are just some electrical signals, basically. I think that we're something else. But anyway, it's a topic for another podcast.
You obviously didn't see Lawnmower Man, either of you two. Maybe a bit before your time.
The sci-fi documentary Lawnmower Man.
Yeah,
I have
that's exactly right. Yeah,
I remember that. He had the gloves or something, didn't he? I remember there were some gloves.
Those
go into the
No, it was more than gloves. It was the full-on, what's it called? It's a big circular gyroscopic kind of thing you strap yourself into. It looked cooler than it would be practical. But I remember in 1998 or whenever that thing came out, it was pretty cool. Anyway, I digress.
But yeah, you stepped on the cocaine vaccine. I thought that was pretty interesting. Vaccines for everything now. So this is a vaccine, I guess good or bad news depending on your persuasion and habits. Apparently Australia is the biggest user of cocaine in the world, so maybe for some of our listeners not too good. But it's a vaccine that stops cocaine being effective. Basically it binds to the cocaine molecule when it enters your body and prevents it being able to get into the brain to affect your behavior. So if you're addicted to cocaine, you can take a vaccine. Cocaine addicts, obviously.
I have had at least one person said that I've known that they said they're addicted to cocaine.
Yeah, works for crack too, apparently. So
yeah. It's a pity that they have these drugs of addiction. Although, I heard cocaine is pretty popular. Just the idea of putting laundry detergent up your nose just seems severely hazardous to me. But I could imagine, apparently other places have better cocaine than Australia.
I think there is a meta trend here of vaccines solving a heap more problems than they could have before, with some of the new tech we've developed over the last few years. So I think we'll have vaccines for a lot of stuff.
Do you know what I would get behind though? Coca leaves. Have you guys had coca leaves?
No.
You chew when you're hiking around the Andes. You chew coca leaves, and it gives you it's like a kind of caffeine-y kind of feeling. I actually quite like it. They're not allowed in Australia.
A caffeine-y / cocaine-y kind of feeling.
I don't know what to compare it to, but it's definitely a little bit of an energetic buzz. Not bad. Not bad.
The last one for me, which I think is, we've talked about before, but ChatGPT's had another big upgrade. It was breaking news kind of last week. I think it's a massive step up. So the main things for me, faster, it's got way longer context window. So they just blew out a bunch of AI startups, all the AI startups, which are give us all your data and PDFs and we'll create a tailored AI. They just made that a standard feature. And now it's multimodal. So you just ask it something and it'll go and do the search or create an image or create a Python script internally that it uses to analyze what you're doing. And it can take up to 300 pages of text as input. So this huge context window. I found it quite a step change. I'd had this peak where I used ChatGPT quite a bit early, found there's some cases where it works well, some was hallucinating too much, started dropping off a bit of usage, still using it sometimes. And I think a lot of people are like that. But I just say that is a big step. It's brought me back into being excited about it again.
I'm finding more and more little use cases to it. I think it's interesting. Cool tool.
Think of this is yet another example of difficulty of wrapping your brain around that follow an exponential. So I don't know, whatever the Moore's law of AI is, whatever the doubling time is in terms of capability, it feels short, right? Like ChatGPT wasn't a thing a couple of years ago. And it's like every iteration is just sort of like significantly blowing through the previous one. I'm really optimistic for it all. What we will find, it's already, we've talked about it before, right? Well, my point being is that what we haven't had yet is we haven't had this integrated into existing consumer products, at least on a widespread kind of basis. It's still out of reach for mum and dad, right? It's still out of reach for Uncle Terry. You're too young, you whippersnippers. I remember when mobile phones came out, right? And it was actually a real stigma. It was like, you're a wanker.
We remember that as well.
Phone. Yeah, but you were younger. And I remember like getting your mom or dad to use a smartphone was a thing. Getting them to use Facebook was a thing. It was hard. I don't get it. What's the point? Why am I doing this? Now, like, they're worse than teenagers, the boomers, right? Like, they're always on their bloody phones and posting stuff on Facebook and whatever. And it's got to even my mother-in-law has like got a YouTube page, right? Where she's got a channel and she's doing, it's like,
shout out.
Do you want to
give a shout? You're going to name the handle?
No, I'm not. Because it's way too
My
embarrassing.
boomers are sticking to the old ways.
Wait, what kind of content is she putting out? Cooking stuff?
She's way into like antique dolls. And so she
That's
builds
cool,
them.
man.
Yeah.
I like this long niche of content. I'm all for it.
Well,
That's
it's
cool.
the 1,000 fans kind of philosophy,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Good on
and
her.
she's got more subscribers than I do. I tell you that much. So,
I mean, you connect with all these other antique doll, aficionados around the world, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just got to know the other antique doll.
doesn't
person
matter
on
how
the road.
big your.
Very cool.
This is the power of the internet. Anyway, my point.
I mean, it sounds
is,
creepy. It sounds like slightly scary. I don't know if I'd want to.
Well, it's
a lot of horror
it's a
movies
strong,
have antique dolls.
The pie chart is very strong, little old ladies, but there is a segment of weird dudes in there.
Oh,
I'll just say that. I'll just say that.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah,
All right.
Next topic.
But anyway, my point being, once we start seeing these AI capabilities as part and more accessible and obvious, like in Word, for example, or just in Gmail. I know we're already seeing it in these places, but that is going to be the real leg up. Yeah, I'm just continually surprised by the state of progress.
All right, here's my good news. It's so rare that I have one. So I do think that this new ChatGPT upgrade makes it order of magnitude or somehow noticeably better at perhaps trying to make life a little bit easier as a medical aid. So the thing is, if you have a symptom and you're like, like your history, like, you broke your ankle as a kid, blah, 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 all this happened, and you're like wanting to find out a little more information, it can really be difficult to like Google your way to anything that might be an insight in your specific personality. And even, your GP, it's like, you should probably go to a physio. There's a whole bunch of things going on. You don't know how to look after yourself the best. I feel like I found, just with an ankle issue, ChatGPT was both reassuring, and I think the information it gave me was good. And, I didn't do anything as like outrageous as a response. It's just got reasonable suggestions, elevation, ice, rest. It's not doing anything crazy. It wouldn't, I don't think, cause any harm. But I feel like when I was like, what should I do right now in this moment, and just type my situation quickly into ChatGPT, I feel like it gave me like solid, like immediate advice. Like, I guess it's trained not to do crazy stuff. It's crucial to get a proper diagnosis, and it's not going to be like, oh yeah, you don't need a doctor, rely on me. But I still think it's...
Yeah. Whereas most of Google results might say that. Yeah.
And also, like, the thing is, I feel like Dr. Google is not a good thing to do for your mental health, because it's like somehow Google always like points you to the most like extreme, like suddenly like, oh my God, it could be 50 other things, like, rather than just like, this is probably
headache.
That's what I'm getting.
This
at
could be.
Like, something like Google's probably like either, you find some comment or whatever from, you need to go to the doctor straight away, like get it checked out. Like, it's like, oh God, just send you on this like odyssey.
Cool.
Anyhow, so that was so I think I am optimistic in ChatGPT being a helper to humans.
Are you using the paid GPT, Claude, or are you using the free one?
Yeah, I've been paying for it since the beginning, just because I wanted.
I think
you
got to pay for it. If anyone's sus on it, thinking it doesn't work well, you got to use a paid one.
It's only more recently that I've found it, I guess, more of what you might say like a practical aid. And also it's gotten better at, if you like, give me the source, and I'm finding now it's more willing to like stay.
Yeah, well, now it
essentially
actually
the website
searches
it
as
got
well.
off
Like
of.
if you challenge it, doesn't know, it'll find and it'll like link to it. Yeah, it's wild.
Exactly. So that's important for me as well. I'm like, give me the source for what you just said. I can't quote ChatGPT. Like, show me where I find this. Like, it can do. It's like an enhancer to search there, which I think is cool.
All of this stuff has made me. I was pretty sanguine on the whole data center phenomenon there for a while. I felt as though it's a commodified kind of product, and it is, I think, like just pure rack space and compute power. It's very much a hardware proposition, but difficult to differentiate too much. I think that's still true, but I feel as though the sheer compute requirement of these tools, potential of these, like the broad applicability of these tools, like it's going to touch everything, or virtually everything. And the way it works, as I understand it, is it's just much more resource heavy than traditional things. It doesn't scale in the same.
Are you considering buying any data center stuff as a result, or is it too expensive? Yeah.
I haven't done the work, but I've had the thought of I should look at some data center because I feel as though the demand could be so vast that it outstrips the commodified nature of it, at least for a time before things sort of.
Well, it's not a small cap, but Goodman Group might be worth a look then.
Yeah,
because
I saw
the whole
that
growth narrative about that now is data centers.
Yeah, I don't. This is a thought bubble, and this is always dangerous to do on a podcast. It's like shoot from the hip. But I'd be curious for any listeners' opinion on that. Is that's like barking up the wrong tree? It's a pretty sort of first level way to play the AI boom, but I feel as though if the demand is sufficient enough, it will overcome that commodity dynamic, at least for the short to medium term. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It is wild to think of how much demand there could be. Yeah, I think maybe we dig into it another time, have a look for a few that we like or something. But I think you're onto something.
The way I think of the killer app, I think for me is going to be when we all have our personal Jarvis. Like, the Google and the Apple assistants, they really disappointed me. I got to tell you, I was so bullish on them.
Yeah.
And I'm one of these diehards.
I have to shout at Alexa 3 times to like change the volume.
I'm one of these idiot masochists who I use it when it's 5 times quicker for me just to like use the screen, but I want to use the voice because I like the promise of it. So I'm this idiot walking around the park with my buds in, going, "Hey Google, hey Google, hey Google." And it's like, bloody hell, I'm trying to be cool here, but I feel as though when it gets to the stage where it's kind of like Tony Stark Jarvis kind of level, like just perfectly conversational, it just does anything, going to any app, does anything. That is going to be imagine having personal assistant that's as good as a real personal assistant, a good one, and that can read and access all of your different apps. Gosh, that's going to be huge. The productivity.
I feel like we're very close. Like
we
I
are
feel like
very
that's like
close
within a
to
year.
that. But it won't work the way that these other. Again, I'm out of my depth here, but I can't imagine the way the technology works that it's going to be something that I have in my pocket for free that I can just query a million times a day. It's the compute is too heavy a requirement. So I dare say there'll be a bigger cost component than most people realize that will shock and jar us when we first hear it. But I think on reflection, when you think of, I'm not paying $80 a month for an AI assistant, like, really? Do you know how much a real assistant costs? And this one's 10 times better. $80 a month is nothing, honestly. And I think when we will have that realization, and anyway, I feel as though that'll be the big killer consumer app.
Excellent. Well, maybe a segue to another AI related company that you've followed for a while, had some good results out. Do you want to dig into Catapult?
AI related? Oh,
I don't know. Don't they claim to be AI related?
Can I just say
that was my nice intro?
Yeah, nice segue.
Do they? Is that
the whole thing's like AI, isn't it? Like telling when people are tired, or they're not really talking on that side.
They are. They're legitimate in that they have, as I've said before, another way to play it. I think companies with proprietary data is the obvious one for me in AI, right? So they're collecting a ton of data, and that is just perfect fodder for any decent AI. And again, they're not building it; they're just pointing other models at it. It's legitimate. It's legitimate. Whether or not it's something that, any other competitor in the space can do the same thing, right? So
you're in safe ground, Matt, because I found the mention AI on their website. They say they have industry-leading technology and insights, machine learning and AI developed data algorithms that deliver actionable insights.
Yeah, look, so my thoughts on that are, it's legitimate, right? I mean, any company around the world uses email. And for them to make the claim that we use email and it's an advantage for us, I was like, yeah, I'm sure it is. Or you'd rather use that than like post things around. The trouble is that it's the same edge that everyone else has. So it's sort of, you've got to be careful with some of these claims. I think where it becomes more pertinent is where you have bigger, better data and more access to new data that you get more of a compounding benefit from the use of AI. So I wouldn't over egg that particular pudding. But anyway, I just want to say before we talk about Catapult, this is the company I just can't get away from, right? So I know everyone can.
Hey, they
roll
have
their
good
eyes.
news out today, man. We don't actually talk about it much. We tease you about it a lot, but
I'm still a
they've got-
holder. I was still. I think
The context for everyone though who hasn't listened for years is like, I used to hold but sold out ages ago, like years ago, like 2018. It was like, $1.70 or something, I think. And Andrew went on to hold and even I think bought some towards the lows and maybe flicked them off and like sort of you traded it and probably actually have done better out of it than I have, despite holding a.
I've been good at buying, less good at selling. But look, the point is okay. Let me back up. This is just a really cool product and use case in here, and it's just been badly mismanaged. Will Lopes from Audible took over a few years ago. Loud and clear, got the message. We need to right-size the ship. They've right-sized the ship. They've been talking a good game for a while, but I think now we've got a few results under the belt where we can say that they are delivering to plan as to what they told the market to expect. That is, we're going to sustain very good revenue growth. And so revenue or ACV or SaaS, whatever you want, it was all up between 20 and 25% constant currency. It's like, and they've sustained that growth and those metrics for a long time. But I think what's interesting with these latest set of results is we're free cash flow positive. They believe to be so on a consistent basis. They even paid down some debt. Contribution margin radically expanded. The incremental profit margin on new sales, as again, really articulated very clearly from management for reporting seasons for a while now, actually delivering on that. And we actually even saw churn really radically improve as well, average revenue per user. So all the key metrics are going in the right direction. I think for a while now, this company has been hamstrung by very well-founded skepticism that they can actually ever pivot. And like on a statutory basis, let's be clear, they're miles away from profitability, but that was the skepticism. And I feel with the new management team here in place, yes, COVID sort of happened in between all of that, but they've actually, I'll give them credit here. They're doing what they said they're doing, and the results feel as though they reflect some success, at least in terms of their goals. So
I'll read out the numbers just for everyone playing at home. Revenue, it reports in US dollars, which in my opinion is actually a positive, although you wouldn't make an investment based on macro thoughts, but it's a US dollar company, almost 50 million revenue, 49.8 million revenue, up on 41.5 last year. The loss massively reduced, which is probably the bright point in my point of view. And they've still got cash in the bank. They've paid down debt. I think you mentioned that, Andrew. Another highlight for people is that it did make just narrow free cash flow, but that's even after taking into account all the investing activities and all the leases.
Yeah, it's encouraging. I think there's probably, in fact, I saw some comments on Strawman. I think there's naturally a little bit of skepticism in here that this is sustainable, and that's perhaps fair enough. There is, I think, also the awareness that there's underlying EBITDA metrics and all this, but some consistent statutory profit and on a decent margin would be nice as well. But I feel as though that the plausibility in the thesis that this will turn around, we know turnarounds rarely turn, but I feel as though there is legitimate plausibility in that expectation now.
Well, it's up on these results 9%, which is good to see. Takes it probably to around $250 million market cap AUD. It's a multiple of revenue, put it that way, is not high. So, hypothetically, if it can ever make decent margins, then it could turn out, higher from here. What's kept me away from it, though, is if you look at the history of the company, it was just a series of capital raisings when they never needed to have another capital raisings. Like, I think the first one for an acquisition was like, correct me if I'm wrong, it was like $3.20 or something. And then it was like $1.70. And then it was $1.20. And then there was just so many that just kept on coming. And each time the fund managers and the investors and the people putting in money, they thought, all right, this is it. We're going to put in and then it's going to turn around.
No, I mean, you're right. I'm more sanguine on the raises. I can't, honestly, when you're trading at these ridiculous multiples of sales, like I kind of feel like, yeah, why not? Right? That's not the error. The error was in expanding into everything under the sun. They got way over their skis, and not just in what they were doing, but the prices that they were paying for it, and just the basic cost management of the broader business. That was the problem. They were genuine and are genuine world leaders in a very exciting space with a long runway. It's still 10 times bigger than the nearest competitor. Absolutely gigantic market. Beautiful economics if the thing was run well. But it wasn't the raising that was the problem. It was what the raised funds were used for that was the problem. And it's not easy to turn around a ship, that quickly, but they've done it. He came in and the board got the message loud and clear. We need new management. There's something decent here, but it's just been mismanaged. They brought someone in right from day one. He said, this is what I'm going to do. These are going to be the North Stars for the business. And delivered on what has been sort of said. So I get the history. The history is very real and disappointing. But at a point, and maybe it'll be a different point for different people, but you kind of got to say, okay, that was then, this is now. We made a mistake, we erred, but we've corrected that. Now, maybe the counter side is no, I can never trust them again, or they're just dressing it up and it's all going to fall in a heap tomorrow. And that's legitimate if that's what you want. But I was pretty encouraged by these results. I think it's now at a stage, given the previous results as well, that we can actually say, yeah, it is going so far, at least to plan for the new management.
I reckon personally it'll be a good milestone when they have no debt left. Then loss-making companies with debt is just so not my sandpit.
Yeah, fair enough.
What else has been catching your eye? Claude, you seen any much else going on in small cap land over the last...
Oh, yeah, that's right. Thanks. Yep, small cap news. Yeah, so we've had a few of the out of season reporters like Catapult come out, but also in terms of my own portfolio, a company named RPMGlobal put out a kind of strange little upgrade to guidance, which says they've received a payment relating to a software agreement which was triggered by the change of control of the contract counterparty to that agreement. This payment will result in 3.1 million in income being recognized in FY 2024, all of which will throw through the company's profit before tax. So that's a strange situation. I hadn't ever thought of that kind of clause in a contract. I wonder what that means. I wonder, could it mean that this contract gets paid out, but then they're not going to renew at the end of the term because there's been a takeover, as in their client's been taken over, and that's part of the contract is that they get their contract paid out if there's a takeover. I'm not really sure. It's, as usual, feels like I have half the story and would have to be speculating about the rest. It wouldn't be something that I would be upgrading my valuation on the basis of. Already they give guidance in terms of profit before tax, before managed incentives, so I don't really know what the actual profit will be. But you can make a reasonable guess from their guidances that there's going to be strong profit growth this year. So, and on top of that, I'm glad that they didn't include this uncertain windfall in their guidance before, and that is actually a real positive for me, is that it sort of implies that, yeah, they're being conservative with their guidance, which is 100% the way to go. So I'd say that's probably the positive I take out of it.
Yeah, I think they got a bit of pressure for maybe reaching with last year's guidance and maybe just scraping to kind of get there. And, it was a big year for them. But yeah, I think it's fair. Market always prefers to, be somewhat conservative with guidance and then upgrade if you can beat it versus the opposite. No one ever wants, the moment you put out guidance, you kind of have to hit it or else you're going to have some pretty disappointed shareholders.
Yeah, it's and it doesn't make sense either, because it's it is an option to just not say anything. So you shouldn't say anything unless you're actually sure. And because what it does is, it's not just that people adjust their spreadsheets, it's that you start building this credibility damage, and that can happen to good people and good companies. And it's just, investors have been hit so many times by investing with people that actually have poor credibility. And so if you look like someone who's not to be believed, and you smell a bit like someone not to be believed, then it doesn't matter if your mistakes were innocent. In the end of the day, you're going to get marked down.
Too many management teams provide enough rope to hang themselves, though, right? It's usually where it has been, and I'll probably err on the side that I think more often than not, it's just hubris and not conspiracy. But why did you paint yourself into the corner by putting these things out there that were beyond what was necessary, I think, for the company a lot of the time? And then it's like more generally, it's not so much the lie that gets you, it's the cover up. Not that this is a lie, but it's sort of like, oh, we've said this and now we have to, and you can see that for the best of reasons, things get said, and then feeling that needs to be met no matter what, because, well, I did promise the market, I did promise investors this, leads to riskier, sillier decisions, and then it compounds from there. Where I'm of the view where it's just just don't give advice. Don't give anything specific. I wouldn't. Unless you're a very specific kind of business that has that incredibly clear visibility, just don't give it. Tell the IR guy to take a walk. My two rose-colored glasses there.
Yeah, no, I think there's a very fair argument for that. Yeah. A lot of the machinery of the market always pushes for guidance so that they can have something to tell clients, blah, blah, blah. But no, I think that's fair.
But my point is I think you get the shareholder base you deserve. You know? And the kind of people that want that, well, it's just like, we're not for you. See ya.
Yep, no, I think that's fair. Yeah, anything else catching your eye in smalls? What else has been out there?
What else has happened?
I don't know the company well anymore, but one that I always do keep an eye on because it has some attractive features is OzForex. Not sure if you guys have looked at it lately.
Not in a million years. Update us.
Yeah, well, so again, I'm not an expert on this. It's more on the periphery of my watch list, but I do like it because of this idea that I guess because it's just taking a tiny margin on the moving around of money, if you have an inflationary environment, then hypothetically, I would have thought its business could scale quite well with that kind of business. So that's why I kind of like it at the moment. However, today it's just put out its results and it's down about 10%. So I don't know the company well enough to give an explanation. I'm guessing it just came in below estimates or whatever it was. If you actually look at the results themselves, you wouldn't be too worried about the company. It seems to, it's like got earnings per share of about 6.5 cents per share. I'm not quite sure actually the cash, how good the cash flow is hard to really get a read on the cash flow glancing at the cash flow statement because of the nature of its business, but it's profitable. It's not overly expensive based on, your traditional PE multiple sort of situation. So yeah, so the last half, by the way, was 6.5 cents per share. So it might be on like 10 times earnings or something if it maintains its current profitability. So I think that's like flagged, especially with it falling even further today. It sort of flagged to me as one that I want to have a little bit of a closer look at. I've looked at it before a number of times, not wanting to buy it yet, not having bought it just because it seems like, and this is what I can't get past, and maybe this is why I should just take it off my watch list once and for all, but it just seems like a cutthroat competitive business, right? Foreign exchange stuff. Now, it's not the only challenger just taking share off the big banks anymore. And then you look at, I think it's called Wise. Every time I've come up and researched this segment, I'm like, seems like this other company might be a bit better than OzForex. Do I really want to get involved in a low margin competitive business buying the company that I think is worse than the other one? So that's kind of what's kept me away.
I've started using Wise as well. Like I used to always use OzForex, partly because I researched it like many years ago and just it was good. It was much cheaper than the banks. So the banks just absolutely gouge you. They were maybe 80% cheaper than the banks. But then Wise I found was, maybe 90% cheaper than the banks, which might be, half as expensive or, like you're still saving quite a bit of extra money. I found at least for transactions I got quoted using Wise. Yeah. Big international payments transfer giant Wise. And I have a friend that's invested in them. Who invests internationally.
In Wise.
Yeah. And he was talking about how great it is, how innovative it is. And then you kind of think of OzForex kind of up against that scale. Makes you wonder, how they compete in that regard. So yeah, I think that gave me some, reasons for concern with OzForex as well.
They're all screwed. They are all screwed. They are. I have no idea what it's about to hit them in terms of international remittances.
I didn't even think of the Andrew angle here. Like he's like, yeah, right, okay.
So what's Lightning? Is this Bitcoin Lightning? Is that?
Yeah, what's your bear case, Andrew? Why should we avoid this?
You've got 3 to 5 minutes.
I'll give it to you in 30 seconds. It's just like I can transfer like for a fraction of a cost without any middleman. Like where's the comparison? You are literally, well, not literally, but you're kind of comparing sort of like snail mail with email. Really here. It's just sort of like the only reason
if I was going to use it right now, like I want to transfer money to New Zealand, is there an alternative with a Bitcoin based thing? I want to transfer some Aussie dollars to my family in New Zealand, for instance. Is there something that I would use today, or is this? I
don't know. Between Oz and New Zealand, the US is increasingly getting services like that. So all you really need to do is just have a currency conversion at the end. So it's sort of, Strike has built its whole business model on, don't even worry about Bitcoin. It's just under the hood. Forget about it. Take your US dollars in and we'll spit out lira or whatever at the other end. Don't worry about it. We're just using it for our transfer mechanism that we just bypass the banks and the cost and the rails, and we don't have chargebacks or any of these. No, it's just so much better. Like it's hard to really drive that point home. I'm
curious about your choice of lira in that example.
Why?
What country were you thinking of?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, was it Turkey? Is it Italy 20 years ago? Where are we going with this Bitcoin?
Dude, there's 160 something different national currencies around the world.
Yeah, I'm sure
You
there
know?
are tons of liras.
And you need some kind of intermediary. The intermediary at the moment is the US dollar and largely the SWIFT network. It's a network built in the 70s. I don't know why. Look, people will realize it soon enough. Companies are already starting to realize it, and it's just like why the whole raison d'etre of these kinds of companies like your Western Unions were there because you needed someone to navigate the plumbing of this arcane system and all of the hoops and regulatory nightmare that you have to get through. And that's just disappeared. Like those businesses are gone. Like the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. And I can say that with like about as much conviction as I can say anything.
Claude's turned off his microphone
Yeah,
and camera,
yes.
but I'm sure he's listening. Really?
Yeah, I'm here.
I don't know. I just don't know why it's such a controversy. All I get whenever I say it, people chuckle and then we move on. It's like if I'm
No,
wrong,
I'm asking
let
to
me
use it.
bloody
You're
know.
saying,
What
you're
am
saying it's so much better, but it doesn't exist yet. That's all. I'll use it. If you find me one that works in Australia and New Zealand, I'll try it out.
Yeah, I don't know
I'm not
about Aussie and
against
New
a
Zealand
better
at this
system.
stage.
And I think actually international payments, I've said for quite a while, is one area I could see Bitcoin being currently superior to a lot of existing methods.
Yeah, 100%.
So if you find me one in Australia and New Zealand, I'll try it.
Yeah.
There you
It'll
go.
come.
Got a commitment.
It'll come.
In conclusion, am I taking OzForex off the watch list or leaving
Yes,
it on?
take it off. For God's sake, it's dead.
What's your
It
vote?
is
What's
dead.
your vote, Matt? What's your vote?
I'm not for
It's like 10
the
times
same
earnings or
reason as
something, I don't
Andrew.
know.
It's going to be 10 times zero earnings very soon.
All right. He's gotten fired up now. I've been more worried about Wise in the interim. As I said, like they're, based in Australia, there isn't anyone else that I'm aware of that I could use if there is. Andrew, I'm sure will Google a lot after this and tell me to try
I
something.
don't have time today, but
So
I will.
that is less concerning to me. But I do think, they're reasonably priced. So I think it's more probably like it's buying something that you think it's like cheaper than intrinsic value and it can close a gap versus something that's probably going to compound to become a monster. That's probably what I think about in OzForex.
All you're doing is you're saying, are they dead next year or are they dead in 10 years? That's the argument, right? I don't know when it is, but sometime within that time frame, they either radically re-engineer the mechanics of the business from the ground up, or they're dead.
All right, just to complete your thought though,
Period.
why wouldn't they just, if there was this better network, they could just start using it? They still have all the customer relationships.
Yeah, why didn't Kodak win in the digital camera race? Like there would be some dinosaur in the organization. It's the institutional inertia who's just like, no, we've invested all of this. I'm not getting into this crypto nonsense. It's a waste of time. We're not doing that. Yeah. And it's just like everyone whistles as they walk past the graveyard. It is the lesson of history that it's just like, why look at the newspapers? Look, anyone who should have won from the transition to the internet didn't win because they didn't want to give up their existing streams of revenue, and it was stolen from them. And it's just like,
is there anyone else you think we should be thinking about on the ASX, like ASX companies?
No, there's a couple that are doing. There's one that's trying to do a Aussie dollar stable coin.
Oh no, I mean like that will be disrupted by what you expect in Bitcoin.
I'd be tempted to say the banks if you take a very long time frame, but I don't think. I think actually the banks will they ignore, they'll laugh, they'll fight, they'll lose, and then they'll just adopt. Your CBA app will have a Bitcoin wallet within that. There will come a point where it's kind of like we adapt or we die. I think it's that radical.
So shall we move on to
yes, let's move
Group?
on.
Yep, sounds good.
Do we want to touch on old DGL? Pretty sure we've put the boot in that a lot of times, but now it is pretty low. So once upon a time, bit of a small cap darling, obviously become a bit embarrassing for everybody involved. Pretty much sitting at those lows now, actually. Not much above them. So you could say the sentiment's probably low. P ratio, according to CommSec, is 10.2. So that, I guess, contrasts with the comment that they just put out. So they had the AGM today. I bet that was great vibes in there. They had an AGM and they say, whilst economic conditions remain uncertain, DGL expects profit growth in FY 2024, but earnings are expected to be weighted modestly to H2, basically. So obviously, I don't know, one of you want to do a quick, vague rundown of what these guys do, or have I done it justice there?
Yeah, I mean, basically a lot of different chemical transportation, logistics, storing stuff for a whole lot of different industries and trades. And
it's a dirty business, I guess.
It's a dirty business. Yeah, they've been on they'd made a lot of acquisitions and had used their kind of darling status to make a lot of acquisitions. And some of the stuff, there was that scandal with kind of going after a beloved New Zealand woman, Nadia Lim, but we don't need to go into that. And then there was also some other kind of questions where, were the acquisitions kind of as high quality as expected, and was there enough cash coming out? There was other stuff like that kind of brought down from the highs that they're at one stage where they were more of a darling.
On a sociological level, I feel like everyone's just gone, let's just avoid it. Let all the people that buy stock, because they're like, oh yeah, it doesn't matter if he says that, this business still good. They lose money. They write to their investors, oh, this is how we lost your money this month. They're like, their investors are like, not only is he someone I don't want to invest with, but you lost me money. So it's just like the sentiment can just be really wrecked, right? And so I think at some point, if you're just that guy that's willing to take the potential embarrassment, potentially there's gains on offer. But the complicating factor is you would have thought you might be going to get gains by a sweet dividend yield. If this is on a P ratio of 10, then you could get a dividend yield, which would be pretty epic. So you could just be paid to, secretly hold DGL shares if you're a small cap fundy or whatever, or even just a general.
Would you consider it for yourself, Claude, or is it enough?
Well, it's the it factor, right? It's like, it'd be kind of embarrassing. At the moment, I'm very transparent with subscribers about what I own. Like recommend. I'd have to recommend it to other people. I don't. Mm-hmm. I'm not. It's just. But that's how I could also see it could be undervalued, right? How many people like me were like,
totally.
Oh, maybe it's cheap, but I just personally just don't want to get involved. Like that's how that could be the reason it's too cheap, right? So
100%,
kind of in your face there.
Yeah, I think that's a good call.
Yeah, that could well be it. Having said that, like I said, probably if I were to be trying to make a thesis to be longer, it would be like, hey, massive dividend yield, just hold it, and you'll be all right.
And quite diversified too, right? Like, in a slowing economy, like they're exposed to a whole lot of different industries. So
yeah,
there's still going to be demand.
And also it's kind of essential stuff as well.
Yeah.
At the same time, they've said at the moment they're not paying a dividend, they're reinvesting in the business. Now that might ultimately be the right way to go, especially, if the equity is too low now for them to want to issue much of it for acquisitions.
Yeah.
So from a capital allocation perspective, I guess that's not necessarily a bad thing, but from a how do I get paid investment thesis point of view, it is not attractive.
Yeah. Andrew, do you have any thoughts on this? Are you still Googling Trans-Tasman Bitcoin?
No, I'm not. I was looking at their presentation, actually. I've not done the work on DGL. But yeah, I mean, a few things you said there just rang some alarm bells for me. It feels like there's a board and management team that more about having a big business than a great business.
It could be a risk, of course, when any roll-ups, like how many roll-ups actually go well? Just quick quiz for us now. Like, what are the good roll-ups?
1 in 10, right? Yeah, maybe
long term.
Oh gosh.
I mean, it's like Constellation Software. It's like,
oh yeah.
It's one of the few.
The funeral guys, did they do all right?
Yeah, Propel. Yeah.
Oh, did they? Okay.
They're now Propel. They're still Propel. Mm-hmm. And it was a roll-up once upon a time. Then it got so big, right?
Yeah. Invocare was a roll-up. Yeah. They can work. It's just
what else? Sonic Healthcare, a bit of a roll up there.
Yeah, it just takes a team that is very good at identifying value, either in paying the right price or in recognizing something that once added to their arsenal is greater than the sum of its parts. There's a strategic advantage in us having it than you having it, and we can pay a price which doesn't make sense for you but makes incredible sense for us. I mean, and it's just statistically the odds aren't good that you're that team that can do that because it's very hard.
Yeah, it's just so
especially
easy
with childcare centers.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Well, is that it? Any
let's wrap it up there.
On that note,
I feel like that was triggering some other memories of childcare centers. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but maybe we'll just leave with us staring.
No, childcare center roll up. That's what it triggers.
Okay.
Childcare centers themselves, actually feel like we've had beautiful ones.
Yeah, very good. All right, we'll wrap it there. Thanks very much for listening. You can hit us up on Twitter at BabyGiantsPod. Come through with some recommendations for some Trans-Tasman currency exchange. And until next time, thanks very much for listening.
And one final thought. I just looked up the share price of G8 Education and look at that 10-year chart. It's really strong.
They're still listed. There you go.
Adios, amigos.
That's a hidden gem. All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys.